Okay, welcome. Thank you very much for being part of my vlog. I would love for you to give a little bit of an introduction about yourself.
Thank you, Vaishnavi, for inviting me to your wonderful vlog. Hi everybody, my name is Nigam Khanal. I'm from Nepal. I currently live in Canada, so I'm vlogging with Vaishnavi from Fredericton, New Brunswick, which is in the eastern part of Canada. I came here as a student in 2012, and currently I work as a domestic violence outreach worker, or basically you could say an advocate for domestic violence victims. I'm a feminist, more aligned with radical feminism and Marxist feminism. I have had my own share of experiences with feminism in Nepal and feminism in the small province of Canada and across Canada. So yeah, I would love to talk. Today we're focusing more, I think, on Nepali feminism. So yeah.
Yep.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I've always been particularly drawn towards feminism that's happening in the global South. We don't get to hear a lot about it, and it has been an absolute pleasure to hear voices like yours. And just last week, I had a friend from Pakistan talk about the motorway rape incident in my vlog as well. So it's important that, for me, it's important that I register the global South voices more than anything else, because all of everything else you somehow get wind of, but this one, we're always like 2, 3, 4 steps behind. So it's great to have you. So I'm going to just quickly get started, and I want to ask you about this current situation that's going on in Nepal with regards to citizenship. From what I understand, given all the stuff that I have read, I come to understand this as a very misogynistic sort of a bill that's being proposed. Could you talk a little bit about that, please?
Okay, just so you know, the bill has been endorsed by the parliament, by the federal parliament in June, so it is gonna come to effect. To give a little bit of background about Nepal, as you know, Nepal is currently in a transition phase. We overthrew monarchy. We had, a monarchical rule, king for over 50 years, and we overthrew that, and Nepal is now a republic. This new Citizenship Act was in effect back in 2006, and now with the, it was back in 2017 when the Home Ministry proposed this amendment to the Citizenship Act, which was on the Constitution of 2015. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It is misogynist. It has been endorsed, unfortunately, by the parliament without taking into consideration the issues raised by various women activists and organizations in Nepal. Some of the things, I would say that is much progressive. Well, not much, a little bit more progressive than it used to be in 2006. So a few good things. So I'll talk about few positive things about this bill, and, of course, the negatives. So the positive things is that Nepali women can pass their citizenship to their children. However, there's a catch on this. So there's few conditions in this new bill, or a new act, you would say, because it's been endorsed, that when a Nepali woman is passing the citizenship to her children, if the father was Nepali, then great, it will work out. But if the father was foreigner, the child gets naturalized citizenship. It's not the citizenship by birth. If the father was not in the picture, say, for example, if it was a child born out of, rape or other circumstances, she would have to provide a proof saying that the father is missing. So it's, as you can tell, like, it's very patrilineal and misogynist in some ways, even though there has been some good things about it. Before, in the Citizenship Act of 2006, any foreign woman married to Nepali men could apply for Nepali citizenship as soon as they were married to a Nepali guy, as long as they renounced, or they were in the process of renouncing their home country citizenship. However, this new bill or new act mandates that a foreign woman who is married to a Nepali citizen has to wait 7 years before they can apply for the citizenship.
if a Nepali woman marries a foreigner, the man has to wait for 7 years to get citizenship.
That's where the sexism lies. So if a Nepali woman, say for example, I married a foreigner here in Canada, went back to Nepal, raised my children, they would not be entitled to a Nepali citizenship by birth. Unless my husband was living with me for 15 years in Nepal, proved moral
loyalty,
competency, and spoke Nepali language. And there's all kinds of list of rules that a foreign spouse is supposed to be before he can apply for a Nepali citizenship, right? But that's not the same case for a Nepali man who married a foreign woman. So if a foreign woman married a Nepali guy, was living in Nepal, she can simply live there for 7 years, renounce her home country citizenship, and be given the naturalized citizenship. So yeah, there's a difference there. So, I think a lot of activists have focused on this foreign woman aspect of the bill, whereas my focus is on Nepali women, because Nepali women are themselves not being treated in the same or fair manner.
Now that you're saying that it is going to come to fruition, that it is going to become legal, and that there is no way we can contest it, do you recognize any forms of justification for such a mistreatment? What is it that they're thinking, that they're saying? Why is it that they think this is okay?
Well, their justification, according to some leaders or the minister or the person, it was the ex-minister or ex-home minister, Ishwar Pokhrel, who had presented the bill at the parliament. His rationale was that Nepal, being a tiny country sandwiched between two large countries in the north and south, China and India, our sovereignty is important to us. We live in the age of capitalism, so of course imperialist forces are always acting to undermine the sovereignty of a tiny nation like Nepal. So his rationale was that Nepal has to apply strict rules when endorsing citizenship, naturalized citizenship, to foreigners. However, the condition doesn't apply this in the same way to men and women, right? For either way, it's Nepali women who are getting the shorter end of the stick, and it no way affects Nepali men. So, it looks like the brunt of sovereignty is only being carried out by Nepali women, because in either case, even though there's some, positive things that, okay, Nepali women can actually finally pass a citizenship to their children, but they would have to be married to a Nepali guy. If they say, for example, the husband was missing, however, if he was a Nepali guy, she would have to say, my husband is missing, so I'm endorsing passing my citizenship to my child. So that would be by birth. However, she would have to also prove that the husband is nowhere in picture, is missing, or whatever. If it was found to be a foreign spouse, her children would get naturalized citizenship instead of by birth. So there's a little bit of difference going on. And the rationale is that, of course, we have to be more stringent towards foreigners, basically.
Right. In the past, there have been some landmark judgments. I mean, this is something just get it off of the internet. This one particular case of Sabina Damai versus the government of Nepal, where in her situation, she could not exactly prove who the father of the child was. And then the judge kind of waived off any mistreatment and gave the child citizenship. And sort of made a law that in the future, if such situations were to occur, the government shouldn't intervene in the process, and that the child should be given purely by the merit of the mother's citizenship alone. Now, has this new act kind of superseded the earlier judgments?
Depending on what kind of citizenship she got, because there's a difference between citizenship by birth and naturalized citizenship, right? Because as a naturalized citizen, you cannot hold most important posts of the country, like prime minister, deputy prime minister, chief minister, and so forth. So the current act does say that if the trace of the parents are missing, and for any children born within the territory of Nepal, the parents are missing, they would automatically get citizenship by birth, given that they are endorsed by, the municipality or the village committee or whatever, right? So they have to go through those bureaucratic levels. In this case, for example, Sabina Damai's father was a foreigner, for example. The mother, if found out that the father was a foreigner, she would, her citizenship by birth would be revoked and she would get a naturalized citizen.
And talking about the privilege of contesting in elections or things like that, I also understand that the political parties have often come under fire for recruiting far fewer number of women politicians in their executive board, which in itself is a very pitiable 33%. They have gone ahead and succeeded in recruiting far less than that. In fact, would it have helped if there were in fact more women for them to be able to see this to be a misogynistic act that it is? Do you think it has any bearing on it at all?
Absolutely. I mean, we need to understand where Nepal stands historically, right? So Nepal, even though has been recently been a republic nation, we still have the remnants of feudalistic ideologies, the superstitions, practices. Our cultural traditions, norms are very much shaped by the feudalistic patriarchal values and norms. So we need to understand that even these political leaders in the so-called communist parties or leftist parties have been shaped by those very norms and values, right? They were all brought up in this patriarchal society where women are considered the private property of a man and the family. So I'm not surprised that, even though we have made a progress in the constitution itself that women must be represented, at least 33% of the women must be represented by the election commission. It was stated by election commission in the last election that each party has to represent 33% of women in at all levels, whether it's federal, provincial, or house or municipal levels. So even though that was ordered by the election commission and it's also written on the constitution, the parties failed to do so. And it doesn't surprise me because it's very, very recently that Nepali women have been able to get out in the public and, claim that ownership and kind of fight for that equality with men. Very small progress. We have had some political wins, but in the cultural and social level, like women are still considered to be the bread makers basically, and expected to look after the household before they do anything else in the outside, right? So I agree that had there been more representation of women, I think it would have made a difference. Why women don't do that and why parties don't do that is because most of the party in the executive, it's the male leaders, and most of the central committees or the main decision making body is comprised by males, right? So it is very, very difficult for these males to advocate for women and demand that women be represented. In fact, I'll give you an example. There was a committee formed when the Citizenship Amendment Bill was introduced back in 2017 by the Home Ministry, because the parties were so much in disagreement with each other that a separate commission had to be formed. And guess who led that commission? It was all male members. There was, I think, one or two females who comprised of the committee who would give suggestion to the government or make amendments or edits to the bill, right? So that tells a lot about why women's voices were not completely incorporated in this bill or act. Yeah.
Sure. Coming from India, I sort of understand that within my country, there are so many ways in which we are divided, right? We are divided in the name of caste, in the name of religion, in the name of certain subcategories of both these entities as well. So I'm just trying to understand, in Nepali community, how is Nepal as a society divided?
So very similar to India, actually. As you probably know, Nepal is majority of Nepali people follow Hinduism. Under Hinduism, we have caste system, and we have untouchable system. although it's banned or criminalized by the constitution, untouchability is not to be practiced. Like I said, a large portion of Nepali population is still just getting out of that transition, or in between that transition phase of, we still carry that feudalistic traditions, and where we are, discriminated on the basis of our sex, caste, and whatnot. And the situation of Dalit and other marginalized communities is even worse, right? So yes, our society is very much similar to India. Around 80% of Nepali population are Hindus, and we practice Hinduism, and the casteism is something endorsed by Hinduism, as you know, right?
Yeah. So by that extension, it's very obvious to me that anything that gets passed in the parliamentary level or in the constitution level, by the time it sort of trickles down to that last woman in that pecking order, it probably never reaches her, much like how it is in India. It's pretty
absolutely. I would like to point out, however, that in any federal or provincial election or regional elections, there has to be, our parliament is made of 275 members, in total. Out of that, 110 have to be proportional representation, which means that the proportional representation includes women, Muslim, who are, more marginalized in the country, Dalits, and other ethnic communities. Nepal is a very tiny country, as you know, but we have over 125 ethnic groups in the country who are marginalized. We have Muslims who are very absolutely poor and live under poverty line compared to other populations in the country. So our constitution does mandate the proportional representation of those, vulnerable and marginalized groups, including women. However, the trend is that the political parties have tried to kind of push women into this proportional instead of including them in the mainstream politics, and women are always given this proportional representation and not the main representation, which is again something that needs to be really fought. Women really have to push hard for that.
I think it becomes a sort of a lip service in the end, right? That we fight for reservation, and then they shut your mouth by saying, well, you asked for it, we've given it to you, what more are you fighting for?
Yeah.
Been staple sort of retort whenever women ask for some mainstream position or some ability to function as an equal with a man. I was wondering what sort of activism with regards to feminism happens over there. What's the situation? How are women fighting back or pushing back in this system?
I would say that, there are really some really aware young women right now who are learning a lot about their rights, their representation. And it's absolutely amazing how, compared to last, when I was a college student, for example, when, there was absolutely no consciousness about, women's rights other than just, books and the basic rights that, we learned about. Oh, women need to be sent to schools, women need to have, equal rights in education and so forth. But understanding the power dynamic between men and women was not really discussed or understood basically by women. So a lot of those talks about rights was very limited to political rights and in the public sphere. But in the private sphere, we really didn't talk about the issues that women had to go through. And I think thanks to social media, one of the positives of the social media is that a lot of young women are kind of now being aware of the injustices and oppression that we've gone through in the family, in the society, in the political and social and other aspects of life. So I'm happy that a lot of women are paying attention to the issues related to women. However, the sad thing is that a lot of these women are getting their education from social media. So which is not always the best thing, because social media is just a snapshot. There's a meme and then you're like, oh, like I will like the meme and it makes sense. So we really lack the critical thinking, I would say. We do have great feminist scholars in Nepal, but as you know, that postmodernism is something that has grappled the entire world. Postmodernism is also present in our universities. Another thing is that a lot of more aware women in Nepal are abroad educated. People who come from very middle class families and not really the working class families of Nepal. Very privileged. So, their concerns are very much different from the working class women in Nepal, and doesn't really reflect their realities, whether it's working class or very marginalized women from Dalit caste, for example, right? So it's not always in line. So I see the rift there, where the women who are very active in the current feminist discourse are not really speaking the issues or addressing the issues of the working class women in the country, who represent the majority of women in the country. And Nepal is basically an agricultural country where women mostly are, spending their lives in the field, or, running the households. They are nowhere privileged as these women who are advocating on behalf of these women, and their issues don't seem to intersect in any way, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, and then there are all kinds of other liberal issues that we are having to deal with as well. So yeah,
exactly. I mean, a lot of these issues that don't even connect or relate to the working class average Nepali woman in any way. So I do see that as a huge problem. And unfortunately, because of social media access in every nook and corner of the country, women are not being able to think critically. And I would say that there is a huge problem in that. But there have been, some really good pushbacks, especially in regards to the Citizenship Act. I think that was amendment bill. I think there was a good activism going on there, although there were some, issues that I had. So yeah.
Right. I think it's pretty much similar to what's going on over here as well. Only India is a lot bigger and so many different languages. It's sometimes extremely difficult to try and get a sense of what's going on, in the West or up north, sitting, in the South where I am. So, and the reverse is also true, because most of my friends in, say, Bombay or Delhi won't have any idea what's going on in Chennai. People might be dying and they will still have no. So the country is in itself very, very divided. And in the same way, we are also divided in terms of our access to social media, which completely eliminates people that can't afford to access it, that don't have the privilege to access it. So it's eerily similar how things have been. Now, given the citizenship situation, I think it's pretty much sealed
for now.
Yeah, unless there's a amendment at some point in the future, and keeping my fingers crossed for the women of Nepal. But what do you see in terms of the young girls? What are they looking up to in schools? What is it like for them to grow up and call themselves Nepali women?
Well, I mean, the future, I'm an optimistic person, so I would like to be more optimistic and say that, there's a lot of awareness in women, I mean, we hear it every day, unfortunately. Like, there's a class divide in country, right? In our country. So there's rich and there's poor and there's some middle class. So that contradiction is always going to be there. So the issues of the working class women are never going to be the same as someone from an upper class of the society. So while I see that, what I see is the upper class women are more focused on social media activism, and whereas the working class women are doing the groundwork to raise awareness. I do notice that there's a little bit of grounding and, firsthand experience of these working class women, and they do have a good feminist framework, and they are taking a lot of work to educate other women, and, be it political rights, be it social right, cultural, and pushing back against misogyny and dealing with, the more severe forms of misogyny. I mean, like 10 years ago, we didn't discuss about periods and why absenteeism should be practiced, why women need to be sent to, these huts to practice menstruation. And that's in the village. In urban areas, so many households practice, segregation. Like if you're on your period, you're not supposed to go to the kitchen. I think that consciousness was not there as much when I was doing my undergrad. And I mean, it was something like, oh, my friends were like, oh, you do that? Like you go to the kitchen and do that? So, it was something radical to do 10 years ago, but I see a complete different picture now. So many young women are speaking out against it. They are learning to speak up against sexual harassment and whatnot, and really, and understand that their future doesn't have to be just, looking after their husband and reproducing, and all of that. So I think the future is bright. I'm optimistic. I do wish that, the education was not limited to social media. And I think there's a little bit of work to be done. And I hope, this education starts from schools, that, we do have the first kind of majority elected socialist government in place. But to our disappointment, it hasn't done anything socialist so far, in terms of theory. So I wish this education started from school where, men, girls and boys were taught that, any kinds of discrimination is wrong, any kind of oppression is wrong. We're all equal and we need to be both treated with respect and dignity. As you know, that boys are raised to be boys, not do any household chores, not help their sisters or mothers. Fortunately, I was lucky because in my family, three of us, I have two younger brothers, and we all shared the household chores. And I, even though I bared, I took more of the household chore brunt. I can tell that my brothers, learned doing household chores and not take it as something to be ashamed of from a very young age. And I think that should happen in every household in Nepal. Every boy should be taught to have, dishes, sweep, clean, whatnot, right? So it starts from the family, it starts from the private. And I think that's when all these progressive the acts, bills, articles will start making sense, because if we don't start changing the households, we can't change the public.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, and the Nepali menstrual hut situation is a global phenomenon, because it has taken so many women's lives, and it's so unhygienic. It has caused generations of gynecological issues in women, and it's not okay. I'm glad that women are speaking up about it and are, putting an end to it. I was going to ask you, unlike in India, where we have a completely fascist right-wing government that is sort of terrorizing the minorities in their own way. We have our own citizenship amendment battle going on over here, where the focus is in eliminating people that practice Islam. So while this is expected out of a extremist Hindu government, I was sort of, a little irked, because in Nepal, it's a leftist government. One would hope that things are not as bleak. One would hope that a leftist government would think it important to give equal status to a woman and minorities. And yet things are a little slow. So do you think it's just patriarchy is the answer?
I think so. Yeah, I definitely think so, because like I said, it's one thing to be rehearsed in Marxist theory, but one thing to put it in practice, especially men. I've known great Marxist theorists who are men. They are great humanists, but when it comes to their treatment to women, they're absolutely no better than any misogynist, right? So this male entitlement that they grew up with, that is taught by the patriarchal values, they still suffer from that, and they're not giving up their power easily. So that's why I feel like the education needs to happen in the household, right? So that patriarchy needs to be smashed from this household. Yeah, we have built that infrastructure in the constitution that, we will have a progressive system in place. It will be a socialist system in the end, but this government had a great opportunity to start building that foundation. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened, and that's one of the reasons is patriarchy for sure, where women are still not represented in the decision-making levels in the parties itself, in the bureaucracy, or even at multiple levels like meetings and whatnot. Like there's a you look at a meeting, and then when the meetings usually talking about women's issue rarely has any women representing, right? So that tells a lot about where our society is.
Yeah.
Women have played such an important role in this process of building this constitution. So many sacrifices have been made. We have fought the East India War. Women were carrying children and fighting off the East India Company in the 19th century, and the struggle has continued, and women have always been in the forefront of any struggle against oppression. But when it comes to taking the pie of the win, women are always pushed back by the men, right? So that needs to be addressed for sure.
Sure.
And that can only happen when people are versed in feminism, feminist theory, and of course that needs to be in practice for sure.
And a feminist school of thought that considers that even not all women are equal,
Absolutely.
And
that is addressed by Marxism, right? Because every class has women, and it's always we have the oppressor class, and we have the oppressed, and there are women in the oppressor class. I personally believe that women of a certain class won't really fight for the women for the other class, the oppressed class. They can do lip service, but the fight has to be within the class, and of course against the other class. So yeah.
Right, but I hope in this fight we somehow find it in us to unite as the sex class of female, and understand our privileges and our misfortunes, and sort of join hands and move forward in as the only direction. And I also hope that people that are watching this would sort of get a sense of what's going on in two very similar global southern countries, and understand that while we are different, we are probably not all that different at all.
Not at all, because our issues are very, 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 very similar. We have, I know in India, the 19-year-old girl who was raped in UP has become a huge issue. And around the same time, a 12-year-old girl was raped. And it's become another big issue. So, our issues are very similar. And both girls were from Dalit families, by the way. The girl,
raped by a man in the upper class, male. Yeah. So certain things have been only recently, people in the media have also sort of opened up to the idea of pointing out the caste of the oppressor as well as the oppressed. Earlier, it used to just be a 19-year-old woman or whatever. Only lately, people have woken up to the idea that there is, we live in an unequal society, and certain kind of reporting is warranted. So
yeah, of course.
This was absolutely great, and I really hope people can take away a thing or two from our conversation today, and I hope this is one of the many conversations that you and I will have. Thank you.
For sure. I really enjoyed. Thank you so much for inviting me on your blog, on your vlog. I used to be a radio jockey a long time ago when I was in Nepal. Yeah, and I haven't been in front of the camera or mic since. So this is great. This is absolutely great. So yeah, thank you.